Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Me, Temari, Konan and Samui. Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. With a small sigh, he stood up and looked the daimon in the eye. I just want one thing in 5 days, announce my succession in 5 days, I still have unfinished business to take care of. He requested of him. Meanwhile Kakashi and Konan, who had been stood at the back, smiled at the fact Naruto was one step closer to his dream. The daimon smiled and gave a nod of acceptance. I understand and I accept your request. In 5 days, you will officially be the Hokage of Konohagakure no Sado. Naruto gave a nod and was about to leave when Shikaku stood up, catching his attention. Hokage-sama, with the time needed for reconstruction and repairs, we need your authorization to allow a construction company and the emergency provisions. Naruto nodded in understanding and quickly thought of what to do. There's a friend of mine from Nami no Kuni that happens to own a construction company, send for them, emergency provisions should be easy enough to obtain from Harem no Kuni, just mention to them my name, and they will comply. Naruto answered as he went out, followed by Kakashi and Konan. The fire daimon smiled further. The great Hokage indeed. Now. Hai no Kuni. Konohagakure no Sado. Outside, Kakashi stepped back and kneeled in front of Naruto. The blonde had a sweat drop at the back of his head and sighed while Konan actually smirked slightly. Hokage-sama. Kakashi answered with a slight grin Naruto couldn't see. Naruto seemed uncomfortable with the title yet. Kakashi-sensei, I'll be going out for 5 days as you know. I want you to oversee the construction and repairs with Yamato Taichu. I won't be here, I'll be going back to training with Fukasaku-sensei and Mombakuzen. Also, I trust the two of you, the advisors may have a trick up their sleeve, make sure you guard the summoning frog that will be left here. I don't want things like Pain's invasion happening again. Naruto turned to look at Konan. Konan, I want you to go back to Omegakure, make sure your forces are strong, and if there's ever any trouble contact me immediately. I don't trust Madara to leave you alone after betraying him. Konan gave a nod, even if he wasn't her master or boss or whatever, she'd follow his orders. Understand Hokage-sama. Naruto groaned at the title, especially at the fact that someone not of the village called him it. I'll leave immediately. Just as Konan was about to turn into paper, Naruto grasped her shoulder. I mean it, contact me immediately. You may have been my enemy a few days ago, but now you're my friend. Konan smiled at Naruto and with a nod turned herself into paper before blowing away in the wind. Naruto turned back to Kakashi and sighed. Kakashi-sensei, stand up. Kakashi chuckled as he stood up from his bow. I want to know something. Who was my mother? He asked as they began walking around the village crater. Their mother? Kakashi asked, surprised yet understanding. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki. I don't know much about her past since it was kept secret by your father. But, what I do know is that Kushina was a talkative and tomboyish woman, and if what Jiraiya-sama had said was true, then much of your personality, as well as style of ninjutsu, was inherited from her. Kakashi told Naruto, who smiled at what he was hearing, glad he got something from his mother. Like I said, I never knew much about her past, but I can tell you that she would be extremely proud of the man her son has become. She was an amazing woman, someone I know you would love. Kakashi sighed as he finished his explanation, reliving his past memories. Naruto smiled as he thought of what it would have been like to have been raised his mother. He was definitely happy at what he'd heard though, and glad his mother didn't turn out to be the exact opposite. Was she killed in the Kyuubi attack? He asked, wanting to know if he had been abandoned or not, despite what he'd heard. Kakashi glanced at him and sighed once again. Yes. She died protecting you from the Kyuubi in its rampage. Most of that night is still unknown to many that actually witnessed the events. Even Sanday Ami-sama didn't know what had gone on completely. I see. Naruto said with a sad sigh. Thank you for telling me. He thanked his sensei as they walked past many villagers and shinobi rebuilding the village already. That reminds me, how's Kurenai-sensei? I heard she had her baby before I left the village to train at Mount Mombakuzen. Kakashi eyed him over one of his books he had taken out after the moment's silence. She's fine and so is her son. She hasn't gotten over Asuma's death, which isn't expected of any time soon, but she's holding up for her new family. He glanced over at Naruto. Now he was the same height. Why? He asked, wondering what the blonde would ask for. Naruto glanced back at his sensei. Now that I'm Hokage, unofficially, I have to look out for my people. He answered before giving him a small wave. I'll see you later, Kakashi-sensei. There's something I have to do before I go to train. Without waiting for Kakashi to reply, he was gone in a burst of speed. Kakashi watched him go with a raised eyebrow. Checking up on your people, huh? You shouldn't lie, Hokage-sama. With a slight shake of his head and a smile, he carried on reading as he walked to wherever his feet carried him. Outside of Konoha. In the forest just outside of the village's walls were 3 kumo shinobi, Kari, Samui and Amoi. The 3 were on their way to Konoha to give a letter from the Rikudō to the Hokage, explaining everything about Sasuke Uchiha attacking their village and kidnapping the Hachibi Jinchuriki and the summit of the 5 Kages. "Sai, what should I do?" Amoi mumbled, but loud enough for his teammates to hear. "Huh?" questioned Kari with a raised brow at her strange friend. "Oh, I was just wondering what I should do if there are a ton of cute girls in the Konoha and they all fall for me." He paused as he was sucking on a lollipop. "Oh yeah, that'd be a problem. Why don't you just date them then? So whoever asks you out first." Kari said annoyed. "Yeah, but what should I do if when I have to leave Konoha she says she loves me so much she can't bear to be apart? I'm scared she might want us to commit suicide together." Amoi rambled on, annoying Kari. "How far along are you playing these scenarios out?" Kari yelled while pointing at Amoi. "We haven't even got to Konoha yet. You're grossing me out. Some guy who looks really hot might come on to you too." Amoi pointed out. "Just use the word hot, Kari said, annoyed while a blush started to form on her face. "Anyway, now that you mention it, some rich tall popular hot might come on to me, you never know." Amoi though just shook his head with his hands on his chin, thinking. "Nah, you're just overthinking things." He said, to the annoyance of both Kari and Samui, although only Kari shown it when she bent down to pick a rock up. "Who are you to talk?" she shouted, throwing the rock at him, which he dodged, causing the rock fly over the trees. What if that rock had hit a boulder and the boulder crumbled, and then the pieces of boulder caused another boulder to crumble, and then it caused a huge avalanche and totally buried Konoha? Amoi asked repeatedly, pointing in the direction of where the rock had been thrown to. "You're the one overthinking things." A few minutes later, all 3 were stood on the village walls looking over at what was just a crater, not a building in sight to be seen. Each had shocked looks and a guilty look on Kari's face as she thought it was her fault from throwing that rock before. "No way. I didn't do that on purpose. Did that little pebble really cause all this damage?" Kari cried hysterically. "Kari, what have you done?" Amoi exclaimed in horror. Samui smacked her head at their antics while rubbing her shoulders. "Don't be ridiculous, let's go find someone to talk to," she said, leading them away towards a tent. Elsewhere within the village. "Think we can still use this wood?" Kitetsu asked a shinobi with him as he knelt by a massive plank of wood. "Yeah, probably," his partner Izumo answered. "Man," Kitetsu started as he looked at the damage all over. "Everything our forefathers built has been destroyed. I can't believe there's nothing left." "The village isn't all they left us," Genma said as he chewed on a senbon. "We're still here." Yamato finished as he immediately went through hand seals. Mokuten. Renchika no Jutsu. Wood release. Serial pillar houses technique. Houses started popping out of the ground in a long line as Yamato slammed his palm on the ground. "Whoa." A shinobi cried. "At this rate Konoha will be rebuilt in no time." Another said in excitement. Yamato, however, was sweating profusely. "You make it sound so easy." Unknown location. Sasuke had informed his team to get all of their supplies ready as they were going to head to Konoha to destroy it. Upon exiting the cave, they had started to run as fast as they could through the forest as they started to tree hop, making their way to Konoha faster. Sasuke had told his team that Taka would no longer have a use for Akatsuki as they had delivered the Hachibi, therefore they were going after their own goals now. Not far from Sasuke, on a tree branch, a distortion in space rippled across the area before a spiral started to open, as if it was a rip in space before a man with an orange spiraled mask appeared. This was Tobi, or better known as Uchiha Madara. Sasuke was jumping from branch to branch when suddenly he was met with a man that had blocked their path. Sujetsu, who was following Sasuke, stopped and turned to the leader of their group. "What's wrong, Sasuke?" Sasuke paid no mind to his white-haired partner as he was staring at Madara in shock. "I didn't even sense him, where did he come from?" Eren too seemed astonished by the appearance of the ancient Uchiha as he just seemed to pop up from nowhere without a warning. A sensor such as her would have normally have sensed someone approaching, but Madara just seemed to appear with no warning. "Hey, Sasuke," Madara said with a wave. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at him before he asked the man. "How did you know where I was?" Madara only leaned in closer. "Don't underestimate me, this technique is well within my powers," the ancient Uchiha said. "What do you want with me now?" "Taka is no longer part of Akatsuki, we have no further use for you," Sasuke demanded. "I said I'd have to kill you if you betray Akatsuki, and you broke your promise to me." The man's single visible Sharingan narrowed as it looked at Sasuke. Sasuke raised a single eyebrow at that in confusion as they had no problem capturing the man. "What are you talking about?" "The Hachibi no Kaijiki failed to capture it, Sasuke," Madara informed him with a disapproving look. Eren too looked confused as she said, "But I thought we captured it. We even gave it to you." Madara stared at them, not saying a word, which made Sujetsu agitated by the man as well as Yugo. It was a fake. The Hachibi pulled a fast one on you. I'm really disappointed in you guys. The man said with displeasure in his voice. Sasuke seemed to realize his mistake, even he failed to notice that the tentacle that he severed during the fight with the Hachibi could have contained Killer Bee. His musings were cut off when Sujetsu shouted. What do you want us to do about it? It's not our business anymore, since we did our part of the bargain. You do it yourselves. No, you will finish your last job as part of Akatsuki. Forget about the Hachibi, I already sent someone to capture him. There's something else I want all of you to do. Madara told them. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at the man, Sharingan blazing. What if I said no? Then you'll have to fight me to get to Konoha. I won't let you pass. Madara replied in a casual manner. Sasuke's hand flickered with lightning as it crackled loudly and held it close to his chest, the Chidori coming to life. I'll force my way through. With a flash, Sasuke immediately closed in on Madara, with his hand already extended to Madara's chest. But just when Sasuke had thought that he had speared the ancient Uchiha with the Chidori, he soon saw himself actually phasing through the man. It's a little too late to go to Konoha now. Madara said, unfazed as Sasuke jumped back. Your goal is futile now. Too bad. Konohagakure no longer exists, my minion, pain destroyed it. Sasuke looked surprised as his eyes went wide. This bastard. He took away his goal. He could feel his anger welling up, rising like tide smashing against the shore. The Uchiha slowly inched his hand towards Kusanagi, about to go all out on Madara, until he saw a green plant with jagged patterns in the middle rise from the branch that Madara stood on. Who's that? Asked Sujetsu, who seemed surprised. Calm down, he's with me. Madara reassured them before turning to Zetsu. So who's the new Hokage? Asked Madara. Well, surprisingly enough, Naruto Uzumaki. Zetsu informed them, which certainly caught Sasuke's interest. Madara looked at Sasuke for a moment. He could feel the sudden rise of killing intent coming from young Avenger. If one could see past Madara's mask, they would have seen him at the situation. I always thought Danzo would be Hokage. Madara mused but was surprised by what Zetsu Blackside said next. Naruto killed Danzo. Sasuke's killer intent shot up at that, while Madara seemed curious at what transpired. What happened? Madara demanded. Zetsu sighed and told them everything that had transpired in the past couple of days, from the start of the invasion to Naruto's appearance, defeating the Path's bodies before going after Nagato. He then told them all Nagato's betrayal as he returned the life of everyone in the village, and especially about gifting Naruto with a Rinnegan. Then came the part about Danzo and Naruto's fight. The more Madara heard, the more he became disgusted with Danzo and how he fused Sharingan eyes into his arm. When he heard the end, Madara was silently thanking Naruto for killing such a pest and corrupt old man, while Sasuke was seething in rage. Naruto the dead last had grown strong, that much was obvious now. Add to the fact he killed the main person he had his eyes on, he would not let this go. So this Naruto killed Pain and Danzo seems strong. Sujetsu said with a toothy grin. Yes, he is probably stronger than you, Sasuke. Madara said, causing Sasuke to growl in anger. Because of you and Pain have made such a high commotion, the 5 Kages have begun to move. They are having a meeting. He looked off into the direction of Konoha. Naruto has the Rinnegan now, huh? I had planned on taking Nagato's eyes for myself, but it looks like I'll have to find another means to gain those eyes. The 5 Kages, Sasuke said, curious. This could mean he could kill Naruto. What would you do, Sasuke? Naruto's your new target, right? Konoha is pretty much decimated. If Naruto is going to the meeting, shouldn't we just go over there by ourselves? Sujetsu asked. Sasuke seemed to contemplate at this, considering the almost near impossible chance of not having a head-on collision with any of the Kages. Harem, however, seemed doubtful about the whole thing. For one, it was the freaking 5 Kages. There was no way that Sasuke could even hope to fight them all at once. Only a madman would dare do so. First, I need Itachi's eyes if I want to kill Naruto. If what you say is true, I need all the help I can get. After that is done, we'll go to the meeting and kill the 5 Kages. Our plans have changed. Sasuke said, without as much as a speck of hesitation in his voice. Madara smirked at that. It seemed the boy wasn't such an idiot after all. Very well, we will go back to the base and transplant those eyes, while Zetsu will take the others to the base until the meeting. So where is this meeting? Karen asked, resigning herself to her fate. Madara motioned for Zetsu to lead them, and Zetsu did so. The jagged pattern of the leaf separated, seeing figure of a man whose body and face was separated in black and white, and it kept separating, tearing himself down in the middle. To the rest that were not used to this, they were utterly disgusted when they saw Zetsu fully severing himself in two, as his white half lead the way with the remaining 3 members of Taka following behind. Madara then looked at Sasuke for a second. Well then, let's go get you your new powers. He said as he grabbed onto Sasuke and Zetsu and vanished. But the Kumo team. Samui's team walked around the ruins until they came across a Hokage who was standing guard by a tent. There are no guards and the village is in ruins. What happened? Samui asked the Hokage, curious at what or who could cause such damage to Konohagakure. It was Akatsuki. We'll soon be on alert and strengthening our guard. He replied while Carrie breathed out a sigh of relief knowing it wasn't her fault. Anyway, I need an audience with the Hokage. I have a letter for her from the Rikudō. Samui said with a bored look. The Hokage gave her a nod before leading the small group to the Hokage's tent where Tsunade lay unconscious, completely unresponsive to the world with Shizune stood beside her sensei. She's unconscious? Samui asked with a raised brow. Yes. Shizune said walking over to them. What can I help you with? I have a letter from Rikudō-sama that I must give to the Hokage, but Samui shook her head. I must speak with the person in charge. Shizune sighed and thought of who would be the best person at the moment. Anbu. She called out and immediately received one as a purple-haired Anbu appeared. Go and find Kakashi Hatake and bring him here. Tell him it's of the utmost urgency, and if he doesn't listen tell him I'll burn each and every one of his books. The Kumo found the threat to be strange, but when they heard the Anbu gasp and chuckle evilly, it was obvious the threat actually meant something important. Either way, the female-looking Anbu was off in a flash. Konoha Cemetery. As Naruto arrived at one of the places that had managed to survive at the edge of the village, he sighed as he looked around at the many graves and started walking forward to the main memorial stone that held all the names of the shinobi that had died in battle. Now that he knew his mother had been killed, he could hopefully find her name on the large slab that held the names. This was his first time ever coming to see the slab of names in his 16 years of life. Mostly because he had never had anyone to go there for, but after the Sanninme had died, he had simply been afraid of going because he was ashamed of himself for not being powerful enough to do anything. But now, with losing more people that meant more to him than anything else could, he had to see them and hope that wherever they were proud of him. Especially with becoming Hokage at such an early point in his life. Reaching the memorial stone, he looked at the names until he found his father by the top, Minato Namikaze. Just looking at the name reminded him of seeing him in his mindscape when he lost it with Kyuubi's chakra. Flashback. Naruto looked up wide-eyed as he was whisked away by a figure, as he had just been about to tear the seal off that would unleash the Kyuubi. Standing directly in front of Naruto was Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, with a small smile on his face. Hey there, son. Minato said with a small smile. Naruto's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, unsure of what to say. He'd always had his suspicions since he'd come back to the village since no one had blonde spiky hair. Well, the Yamanakas had blonde hair, but their hair was simply too light for the color he and the Yondaime had. Now though, everything was so clear to him. Hey, there dad. He eventually replied, finding the word dad strange on the tip of his tongue. I sometimes had my suspicions but Hokage Uchiha would never tell me the truth. I just didn't bother asking Iro-sennin or Bachan in case they lied too. Naruto admitted. Minato grinned and scratched the back of his neck. I guess Sarutobi didn't tell you after all, huh? Sarutobi wanted as little information about the Kyuubi as possible to be given out to the public. He placed a hand on Naruto's shoulders. If anyone had known you were my son, Iwagakure would be after you. You would be in constant danger. Naruto looked up to his father and sighed, and before Minato could react, Naruto had punched him in the stomach and he wasn't holding back anymore. Drops of blood were forced from Minato's mouth due to the completely unexpected punch. He looked through squinted eyes up at his son who was staring at him with a neutral expression, one from what Minato knew he only used when he was being completely serious and joking, just simply wasn't on his list of things to do. Why did you seal the Kyuubi in me? Naruto questioned, with a voice empty of emotion. Minato sighed as he righted himself. I sealed half of the Kyuubi's chakra in you, Naruto, because I knew someday you would use it as your own. You're my son after all. He smiled slightly as Naruto started to relax. I know I've caused you a lot of grief and pain, it makes me the worst father out there, but all I can do is apologize, and I know even that's never enough but… Dad. Naruto interrupted his father's rambling with a small smile. Right. Minato grinned sheepishly. I had a good reason for doing what I did. Years ago when the Kyuubi first attacked the village, I learned something. Someone was hiding in the shadows, controlling the Kyuubi's every move. So, the Kyuubi didn't mean to attack? Naruto asked in shock. No. Minato shook his head. There was a shinobi of unfathomable power. No one could ever face him without a very unique set of abilities. I'm sure he'll attack again. Minato informed his son. Naruto looked down. But the village has been obliterated. He said with a bitter chuckle. Right, I saw from inside here. Minato acknowledged. I know what happened to Jiraiya-sensei, too. Was Pain the one that sent the Kyuubi to attack when I was a baby? Naruto asked his father. No, it wasn't him. Minato shook his head before sighing. It was that man with the orange mask from the Akatsuki. On that night he saw through every move I tried to make. I don't know who he is exactly, but he is no ordinary man that I'm positive of. I'm almost positive he's the one giving orders to Pain as well. That doesn't make sense. Pain already hates everything Konoha stands for. When he was just a kid his village was destroyed, his parents were killed by Konoha. In the end he would have attacked Konoha anyway. Naruto explained with a tilted head, trying to think of everything. I see, Minato muttered. Then that's all the more reason this man would use Pain. He lowered his eyes. As long as the current shinobi system remains in place, we may very well never have peace. He asked you for your solution earlier. He looked Naruto in the eye, who looked at him with a sort of lost look. Figuring out the answer will be long and hard. Or breeds from our desire to protect those dear to us. As long as there is love, there will be hate used to and directed by shinobi. While this remains unchallenged, hatred, that monstrous hatred, will eventually give rise to a new Pain. Pain may be Jiraiya-sensei's killer, but if you think long and hard, you'll realize that he was created by the chaos and strife of our world. To be a shinobi is to be at constant war against hate. It holds true for all of us. Jiraiya-sensei made it his mission to end all hate once and for all, a mission he left to you. I can't let Pain go. Naruto muttered before looking at his father in the eye, eyes blazing. I can't let him get away with this. Kakashi-sensei, Shizune-chan and many others are dead because of him. Right, Minato muttered, with his eyes downcast. Dad, what am I supposed to do? Naruto gave his father a look, pleading for answers. He was smarter and more powerful than people knew, but even so, he was still young. You'll have to find the answer yourself. The Yondaime Hokage spoke softly. I don't know either. Naruto grit his teeth at that. How the hell am I supposed to figure out something Iro Sennin and you, the Yondaime Hokage, couldn't? Stop dumping all this shit on me. He shouted, getting frustrated that he was being shoved with so many responsibilities. Minato smiled and placed his hand on Naruto's head, brushing his hair. You'll figure it out someday. He said with a smile. I know you can do it. Naruto just looked up at him with mouth agape at how his father could have so much confidence in him. Hey, a parent always believes their kids can do anything, no matter what. Now, it's almost time for me to go, my chakra's running out. Minato looked down at the seal on Naruto's stomach that was just a black hole. Lowering his hand, he placed his hand so his fingers were pressed around it. I'll redo the seal, but this will be the last time. With a twist of his wrist, the seal was back to how it was meant to look. Naruto looked up from the seal to his father fading away. Konoha will rebuild, it's all in your hands now, Naruto. Naruto gave Minato a confident nod of his head. Thank you, Dad. Just as his father was leaving his mind, he heard one last thing. Tell Temari hi. You wouldn't believe how proud I am you found someone like her in your life. Flashback end. Smiling to himself in remembrance, he looked beside his father's name and found his mother there, that read, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. That kind of surprised him since he wasn't sure if their marriage was a secret or not. But it kind of annoyed him that if he had grown some balls a few years ago, he would have eventually figured out who his parents were before having to find out when he either loses control of QP or forced to ask someone else. Looking along the large slab of shinobi names, he came upon someone who had raised him for a good while and trained him to be the man he was today. Jiraiya was clearly written into the slab, well more chiseled into it, but either way the name was there, though something occurred to him. Didn't Jiraiya have a last name? Shrugging, he closed his eyes as memories assaulted him. Flashback. Oi Naruto. Jiraiya shouted, causing a 14-year-old Naruto to stop what he was doing to look back at his sensei, who was walking towards him where he sat on a rock. What are you doing? Huh? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow before looking down at the makings of a book in his hands. I was thinking of writing my own book. Not to publish or anything, but something to do and keep me preoccupied. He shut the book and held it up to show the title to Jiraiya. What do you think? Jiraiya plucked the book from his hand and raised an eyebrow. Loveless? He questioned before shrugging and opening it up. When the war of the beasts brings about the world's end, the goddess descends from the sky, wings of light and dark spread afar, she guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. He read from the book. He lifted his head to look at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. And here I was expecting some love story, an epic tale of the poor lonely villager who becomes a hero by saving a princess and makes sweet, sweet love at the end. He grinned as his nose bled slightly at the image. Naruto rolled his eyes at his sensei. Iro Sennin, I've done that already, or do you not remember Koyuki Kazuhana? A small blush formed on his cheeks. Well, done the saving bit, not the second part. He shook his head to get rid of such images. Temari would freaking kill me if I wrote a romance book about a princess. Especially since she knows I've met and saved Koyuki. Don't remember her? Jiraiya asked with an air of disbelief. How the hell do you expect me to forget? He grew a dreamy look. That wonderful body, those luscious lips, she had curves in all the right places, but those breasts, a drop of blood ran from his nose, making Naruto sigh. Hiro Sennin, can you for 1 minute stop thinking about women naked, especially those that are my friends? He growled as stood up to face his sensei. HMPH, you wouldn't know a nice body if it slapped you in the face. Jiraiya grinned before looking down at the book. Either way, it's not bad, for an amateur, I didn't realize you had your way with words. He praised, giving the book back to his student. So you started writing just to keep you busy? Naruto shrugged as he placed the book in his pocket. It helps keep me calm, I guess. And after yesterday it keeps my mind occupied. He avoided Jiraiya's eyes as he walked past him. Jiraiya sighed as he grasped Naruto's shoulders. You shouldn't feel guilty about what you did. Those bandits were going to rape, murder and God only knows what else to those villagers. Killing may not feel right to you, and I'll admit it doesn't to me even after the wars I've been in. But sometimes we have to do the things we hate to protect others. He explained. I'm proud of what you've been able to do at such a young age, Naruto, using such a jutsu that you used yesterday. Using Ranten to actually bring your jutsu to life is something many shinobi can't even dream of. Raiden. Sorry Achi, lightning release. Skyfall is an S-rank jutsu. Naruto, you're only 14 and you was able to create a feared jutsu such as that from scratch. The Sandaime would be proud of what you're capable of now. Naruto sighed as Jiraiya dropped his hand. It doesn't make it any better about killing those bandits. He smiled up at his sensei a second later. But thanks about that jutsu. That was the first time I'd even tried to use it. It was freaking awesome. He grinned with a pump of his fist, making Jiraiya laugh. Come on Squirt, we still have your Suiton training to get through. You may have mastered Raiden, created a bunch of jutsu in such a short time, but there's still more to do. He looked down at Naruto. This kid, he's a quicker learner than Minato was. That village doesn't realize just what kind of diamond they have. He shook his head as he followed Naruto. Flashback end. He was pulled from his thoughts as he heard soft footsteps behind him. Standing up, he turned around to find Kurenai Yuhi, her red eyes shining as she stared at him in a slightly surprised manner. Most likely because those familiar with had been informed that he wouldn't be awake for 3-4 days, obviously they didn't account for his healing abilities. Naruto, I didn't realize you had awoken. Kurenai spoke softly, like she had always done whenever they'd met. Naruto smiled at the older woman. I've been kinda hiding away for a bit. All of this attention is new to me so I'm not really comfortable with it just yet. He explained with a sheepish smile. Kurenai giggled lightly, placing a hand over her mouth. I see. I guess having the attention of every villager and shinobi can be a bit overwhelming, especially given your history with them. She said understandingly. Naruto gave a nod before noticing the little bundle in Kurenai's arms. So, you really did have the baby just before I left to train, huh? He asked softly and a small smile as Kurenai adjusted her son in her arms. Kurenai smiled down at her son before looking up. Yes. She said before moving closer to the memorial stone. He's 3 months now and well, I can't seem to let him out of my sight. Naruto turned around to face the memorial stone like Kurenai and looked at the name Asuma Sarutobi. I had always planned that when the baby came Asuma would always be here to see his son grow. I never expected that on that mission that he would. She let a tear roll down her face while Naruto closed his eyes at the painful memory of hearing from Yamato that Asuma had been killed. I'm sorry. Naruto said, startling Kurenai from her thoughts. Akatsuki have taken so much from this village and its people because of the monster that I hold. He clenched his fists in anger at the organization he now knew was led by Madara. If this beast wasn't inside of me then he was cut off as Kurenai placed her hand on his shoulder and squeezed to get his attention. It isn't your fault. Maybe years ago when all anyone knew was rumors, I may have blamed you, but now I just can't. If it wasn't you the QB was sealed into, then it may have been someone who would eventually use its power for evil or selfish reasons. She smiled at him as she dropped her hand. You were the best person to hold the QB, people may have not realized it in the past, but even I and the other Jonin know you could have let it take control at any time and take revenge on the villagers but you didn't. We may have only spoken in the past due to your relationship to Asuma, but I can speak for everyone else when I tell you that we chose to fight Akatsuki because they wished to take away someone that's important to us all. She smiled at him and she absently noticed he was now taller than her by a couple inches. You're our friend and we protect our friends, even if it's from Akatsuki. Naruto smiled back at her, slightly surprised at her words since other than speaking to her when she'd been with Asuma, they never really spoke otherwise. Thank you. Naruto gave a nod before looking at her son. What's his name? Kurenai gave another small smile as she looked down at her and Asuma's son. It may not be original, but since he looked so much like his father, I named him Asuma Jr. She raked a hand through her son's short black hair. Naruto smiled at the name and could definitely agree with her on looking like Asuma already. I promise Asuma-sensei, I'll protect your kid even if it means sacrificing myself, just like you did against Akatsuki. Flashback. Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto. How's your Futon jutsu coming along? Naruto looked up from where he was slurping on some ramen noodles to see Asuma-sensei sit beside him. Taking a gulp, he swallowed the noodles. Asuma-sensei. Naruto greeted with a smile. Pretty good, I just finished going through that last scroll you gave me of C-rank jutsu. Using my Kage Bunshin to learn and master them all is coming in pretty handy. If I had known about using this way while I was away with Iro-sennin, I'd be much stronger by now. He answered Asuma. You're already strong, Naruto. Asuma chuckled as he ordered a bowl of ramen himself. Looking at Naruto, he almost laughed seeing the wide-eyed stare of Naruto. You don't think I've noticed? When you've been a shinobi as long as I have, it doesn't take much to see things others don't. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone what you can really do, but here he turned serious. How long are you going to hide your true strength? Naruto sighed as he raked a hand through his hair and frowned. I don't know. I've been doing so to not attract attention from Akatsuki or inside forces, but all it's done, it prevented me from helping anyone. I couldn't even help Sora from his pain or stop that Kazuma or hell, even that freaky woman that kept trying to kiss me. Naruto sighed as he twirled his chopsticks through his fingers. Naruto, no matter how strong you are or what powers you hold, you can't always defeat your enemies or save everyone. Asuma told him as he slurped up some noodles. If that was the case, we'd never have long-lasting wars and no one would ever die. The most you can do is simply do what you can and give it your all. Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment before giving a nod. I understand, it's just hard. Asuma chuckled as he plucked a scroll from a pocket and placed it in front of Naruto. That is the rest of the Futon jutsu that I know of. It may not be as much as Suna could give you, but they will help make you stronger. I know you haven't completed your new technique that you've been working on with Kakashi, but even so, someone like you would be able to get these jutsus learned and mastered in a couple of days. Asuma placed his chopsticks in his bowl and stood up, clasping Naruto's shoulder. There's something I want to ask of you as well. Naruto grasped the scroll and looked up in confusion. What is it? Should something happen to me on my next mission? Asuma paused for a moment to think about the mission he was being given to go look for the sighted Akatsuki members. I would appreciate it if you look out for my kid when it's born. Huh? Naruto asked in shock before shaking his head. Kid? So Kurenai-sensei is? Yup. Asuma grinned proudly. Naruto looked at him for a moment before giving a resolute nod. Well, I doubt anything will happen, I'll protect him or her, no matter what. Kurenai-sensei as well. He vowed. Asuma grinned and patted his shoulder before pulling out his cigarettes. Thank you, Naruto. Good luck on your new jutsu, by the way. With a wave, Asuma left the stand. Flashback end. You'll become a great shinobi one day. Naruto commented softly as he looked at the child he had sworn to protect. Just like his father. Kurenai smiled at her son fondly before looking at Naruto. Yes, in a world like this one, I hope he does become strong. Sighing, she looked back at the memorial stone. Who did you come to see? Naruto asked before noticing where she was looking. Ah, my parents. He didn't see her eyes widen. I thought that before I go anywhere, that I should at least see them once. Well, now that I know who they are at least. He glanced at Jireya's name. Iro-sennin was also placed down on here, and I never got the chance to visit here since I had to train straight away. I see, but what do you mean by go anywhere? Kurenai asked with a slight frown. Are you leaving? Just as Naruto went to open his mouth, a female Anbu with purple hair and a cat mask appeared at his side in a small explosion of smoke. Hokage-sama. The Anbu acknowledged, bowing her head. There is a team from Kumagakure that has requested to meet with you. I understand you have arranged with the fire daemon to be leaving for 5 days, but this is of the utmost importance. Hokage-sama. Kurenai thought in shock, her mouth agape. Is he the new Hokage? With Danzo killed by Naruto, then the only other logical choice would have been Kakashi. He's too lazy to even consider such a position, and with Naruto's power and abilities, he is more than suited for being Hokage power-wise and politically, considering all the lands he has saved in some way. But I never once considered that the fire daemon would allow someone so young take the position. Understood. Naruto gave a nod. And Yugao, you've looked over me since I was a kid, you don't have to call me Hokage-sama. He scolded lightly, but with a small grin. The now identified Yugao lifted her mask slight to show her grinning. Can't do that, Hokage-sama. You may have not officially been crowned Hokage yet, but to the Anbu and the rest of the shinobi, villagers included, you are the Hokage. She set her mask back down as Naruto sighed. Whatever. He waved his hand in a dismissive motion, though he had to smile at how he was seen by the people, his people. How did you even know of my new change of status? I was asked by Shizune-san to get Kakashi-san, but he pointed me your way after telling me of your new position. So here I am, Hokage-sama. He could hear the amusement in her voice as she called him that. Fine, go back to what you were doing then. I'll go see Shizune-chan. I presume she's still in Tsunade's tent. He asked for confirmation. Yay, Hokage-sama. With that she vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto sighed before looking at Kurenai who was still gaping. Sorry about that Kurenai-sensei, I hadn't planned on anyone finding out just yet. I'm leaving the village for 5 days to get better control of my Rinnegan and jutsu before I can properly protect the village like I'm supposed to. I see. Kurenai muttered before a smile grew on her face. You finally achieved your dream after all. She said with some amount of pride for such a young man to gain the position of Hokage. I take it that when you get back it will be made official then, and you want me to keep quiet. Yes, I don't want people to find out now, not when I'll be leaving soon. Thank you. He turned to leave but stopped and placed a hand on her shoulder. One more thing, with Asuma Jr. I'll always be there for him and yourself, always remember that. I may be Hokage now, but I still look out for my precious people. Why would you care so much? We never really got to know each other like you did with Asuma. She asked despite feeling touched by his statement. Asuma-sensei was like an uncle to me, he taught me, and when I was a scrawny kid, before even becoming a genin, he would sometimes take me to Ichiraku when Hokage Ajayasen was too busy. He was my family in a sense, and now you two are, he may be dead physically, but he'll always be in our hearts. Especially the little squirt. He confessed with a little grin. Kurenai, deeply touched by his statement, leaned up and kissed him on the cheek, making him blush. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Don't be a stranger, Hokage-sama. She giggled lightly at his mild glare that held nothing but amusement. With a shake and a light laugh, Naruto vanished from his spot. Kurenai smiled as she stared at where he'd just been stood. You've already become a fine shinobi and a Hokage, Naruto-kun, I hope you gain the strength you wish. The near future isn't going to be pretty, and we will all need you. She was broken from her thoughts by the sound of rapid footsteps. Oh Nai-chan. Giving a roll of her eyes, Kurenai turned her head to see Anko running up to her, her trench coat flapping in the wind. Huh? Anko muttered seeing a weird look on her friend as she stopped in front of her. What's with that strange smile thing you got going, huh? Anko asked, narrowing her eyes in suspicion. Kurenai smiled at her friend and tilted her head. I just realized I wasn't alone anymore after all. The statement confused Anko, but the purple-haired woman just shrugged before plucking baby Asuma from Kurenai's arms and started making faces at the now awake baby who giggled and clapped like any baby would. Kurenai smiled at the scene before looking at Asuma's name on the memorial stone. Thank you for giving me so much, I just wish you were here to share it all with me. I love you, Asuma. Sighing, she looked over to where she could see Tsunade-sama's tent and Naruto entering it in different clothing. Thank you, Naruto-kun, for being here for me and Asuma. Tsunade's tent. I heard you were looking for the Hokage. Everyone turned to the opening of the tent to see in the Kumo female's opinion, and Adonis, Shizune also thought so before reminding herself that this was Naruto Uzumaki, the young man that was like a brother to her. Amoy though, he sighed, especially when he saw Carrie's eyes glaze over and a little drool leave her mouth that she barely caught with her tongue. Isn't Kakashi Hatake supposed to be older, with one eye and silver hair? Amoy asked with a raised eyebrow, taking his lollipop out to ask. Naruto laughed lightly. Where are my manners? He asked rhetorically before shaking his head and holding his hand out to Samui, turning serious. Naruto Uzumaki Rokudaime Hokage. He introduced, shocking everyone in the tent, Shizune included. Samui got over her shock quickly and shook his hand, although a little hesitantly, especially after hearing his name. She had heard him being spoken of by many villagers and shinobi as they had been led to the tent. I can't believe what Naruto did. He's a true hero, he should be Hokage. Naruto Uzumaki saved us all again. Did you see his Rinnegan when he fought Danzo? Wasn't the Rinnegan what Pain, the leader of Akatsuki, had? Did he give it to Naruto for defeating him? Naruto Uzumaki, he's lost so much, and yet he keeps doing everything he can to protect this village. What would we do without him? Samui. The apparent leader greeted before pointing at her teammates. These are Carrie and Amoy, my teammates. Naruto gave a nod as he looked them each over. Samui was a blonde short-haired woman with a massive chest and stood lazily with one hand on her back as if leaning on it. To her right stood another woman, only this one was dark-skinned in standard Kunoichi Kumo shinobi attire with her headband in the form of a bandana. She also had a sword strapped to her back. She had a long mane of red hair flowing down her back and she had some of the most beautiful topaz eyes. That was obviously Carrie. Amoy was a dark-skinned male who was stood in a manner that he could have sworn it was Kakashi, wearing standard Kumo attire with his headband tied around his forehead. He had short spiky white hair with black eyes and sucking on a lollipop. He also wore a sword strapped to his back. Naruto-kun? Shizune asked, coming out of her shock. You're the Hokage now? Naruto shrugged with a small smile. Nobody was supposed to know until the time was right. I was supposed to be leaving, but every time I go to, something pops up. letting out a sigh when Shizune just nodded in slight shock. He looked at the Kumo shinobi. Naruto walked up to them, so he was standing directly in front of the team. "I'm the Rokudaime Hokage, I'll take that letter." Samui and her team finally got a good look at the man and were shocked to say the least. "He must be around our age or younger," was the same thought that ran through all three heads. Stood before them all was the new Naruto Uzumaki, his sparkling blue eyes staring at them all with amusement, especially Shizune. He wore the standard attire, which was a standard Konohinin uniform, only instead of the usual blue, this was black with 2 bands each on both of his sleeves, along with a dark green flak jacket. Now that he was Hokage, he wore a black short-sleeve long trench coat with crimson flame licking the edges with lightning sparks arching around the flame. He also had the kanji Rokudaime Hokage written vertically down on the back. His necklace that used to belong to Tsunade was around his neck. On both of his legs were kunai holsters for easier use. On his hands he wore a pair of fingerless gloves which seemed perfect for fighting as they had metal plating fitted in. He wore his headband on his left bicep instead of his forehead to let his blonde red highlighted hair run down freely, passing over his right eye slightly. His sword was strapped to his back, hidden underneath his coat, allowing it to only show the guard, which was in the shape of a 4-pointed bronze-colored star, and its handle, which was light blue, by his right shoulder. The Shizune and anyone else that would see him, they would say he was the spitting image of his father. Though his clothes were a different color, they couldn't deny it. He hadn't been dressed in his current clothing when speaking to Kurenai, but since he was meeting shinobi from a different village, he had decided to change into something more appropriate, leading him to quickly change into a new outfit and find the trench coat he'd secretly made whilst away with Uraya for just-in-case purposes. Shizune was still in shock at the fact Naruto was Hokage, now since no one had been told, rightfully so though, since Naruto had yet to even leave for his training. The different wardrobe change certainly shocked her also, but had to admit she liked it and it suited Naruto extremely well. The Kumo nin were also in shock as this person was only about their age, which was quite shocking to say the least. Besides that, Samui and Carrie couldn't keep the blush that appeared on their faces. Samui just gave the letter over, still in shock at this young man in front of them. Naruto looked down at the letter and activated his Rinnegan to check for any hidden message or such in the letter, unconcerned that they would know about it. Samui looked in shock as she noticed his hypnotizing eyes. She knew it was the legendary Rinnegan, she was just curious how he gained it. Though it proved the villagers she'd overheard were not lying. After Naruto read the letter, he narrowed his eyes at Sasuke's name before rubbing his temple, feeling a headache coming on. "Sasuke, I was wondering when it would come down to this." "What's your answer?" Samui asked curiously. She saw the look of anger pass over his face and was curious over it. "I'm sorry, but he never got to finish," as Carrie had unsheathed her sword and struck at him out of anger. "How dare you!" she shouted as Naruto sidestepped the attack, letting her go past him. She turned around in time for him to make a palm thrust at her chest, forcing her backwards. Carrie then swung her leg at Naruto, which he ducked under, letting the leg pass over his head. Holding his hand forward, he called out, "Shinra Tensei." Almighty push. To the surprise of everyone besides Shizune, Carrie was sent flying back along the ground by an invisible force. Naruto looked down at her with a cold stare. "Just because I'm young doesn't mean I am weak. I was chosen by the Fire Daemon for this position for a reason," he said, sending chills through them all, especially Carrie, at how foolish she was to attack the Hokage. Samui throughout it all had wide eyes, first at Carrie's stupidity, then the Hokage's speed at dodging the attacks without moving much, and then the attack he used to send her flying. Getting out of her shock, she ran over to Carrie and smacked her head. "You stupid idiot, do you have any idea what you could have caused?" she hissed at the redhead, who lowered her head in shame. Naruto chuckled at their actions before grinning, confusing the Kumo nin. "Don't worry about it, I understand your feelings." Carrie arched an eyebrow at that. "How would you know what it's like to have Akatsuki kidnap your sensei?" Naruto's smile disappeared instantly. "See all this?" he said, spreading his arms out to the village. "This was my fault," he said, confusing the three, while Shizune looked like she wanted to protest before Naruto raised a hand, stopping her. "I'm the QB Jinchuriki. Akatsuki attacked the village in order to search for me, and this is the result." All three stood in shock at the fact that he was a Jinchuriki and also taking the blame for everything. Carrie lowered her head in shame again. "I'm sorry." Naruto shook his head and walked over to Carrie and helped her up, causing her to blush at the softness of his hands. "You didn't let me finish before. I was about to say, I'm sorry, but I can't do anything until I meet with the council to discuss the issues." The three stared in shock again as they expected him to shoot them down. "Thank you," Samui said, bowing. Naruto just waved her off. "Don't worry about it, either way, no matter what happens, Sasuke will have to die," he finally admitted, knowing that with what his former friend had done, there was no hope. Once again, shocked and confused looks aimed at him, while Shizune, who was stood close, lowered her head sadly. "What do you mean?" Carrie asked. Sasuke was my teammate. Just over 3 years ago he betrayed us to go to Orochimaru. We fought, and he almost killed me by stabbing my chest close to my heart. He wants me dead to prove he's stronger or some stupid Uchiha shit, and I also know he's going to want to destroy Konoha, and being the protector of this village I'll stop him no matter what. The three stared in awe at the man who had taken the mantle of having to kill his teammate. Naruto then turned to Shizune, who gulped under his hardened gaze. Shizune, call a council meeting in 20 minutes. Oh, and have Sakura look after Tsunade. You can't be too careful around here at the moment. She gave him a nod before she set off to do her duties. He then turned to the three kumo nin. Why don't we have a seat now and speak privately? He asked and motioned to the desk and chairs around it. Getting nods, the three walked over to the desk he had pointed at and sat down in the three chairs on one side as the new Hokage sat on the other side. Naruto sighed and looked up as he brushed his longer blonde hair back. Well, it wasn't long, but it reached past his shoulder blades. So your sensei held the Hachibi? He asked them casually, getting wide-eyed looks from them both. Yeah, how do you know? Amoy asked, confused. Naruto sighed as he realized he couldn't come out and tell them the truth. Calling for a white lie, he answered. Let's just say I have inside information of what bijus they've captured recently. Only the QB and Hachibi were left unaccounted for, and since I hold the QB and Sasuke attacked Kumo and took your sensei, Killer B. Getting a nod from the question, he carried on. Since Sasuke kidnapped Killer B, then everything points to him holding the Hachibi. I see. Samui nodded. There's something else. Killer B may still be alive if he was recently kidnapped. Really? You're sure? Carrie asked with wide eyes. Yes, but with the low members they now have it will take a while for the extraction, especially with the strength of the Hachibi. Naruto then noticed Samui sigh in what looked like relief. Standing up from his seat, he walked over to her and squeezed her shoulder in comfort, making her blush a bit. Don't worry, he will be alright. Just then Shizune popped in the tent. Hokage-sama, the council is ready. She said with a grin. Naruto groaned and stood up. Shizune, how many times do I have to tell you, call me Naruto? Troublesome woman. He muttered, the end resembling a Nara. Without saying anything else they headed off. Council chambers. All of the clan heads were seated in their rightful places. Unfortunately Naruto had no advisors right now as Homura and Koharu were in a jail cell underground. In a way right now he couldn't wait until he got back and assigned his personal advisors, it would make everything easier. The doors eventually opened and Naruto walked in, alongside Shizune who was at his side. The kumo nin were behind him and were honestly quite nervous of how this would go. They knew Naruto viewed Sasuke as a threat now, so hopefully it all went okay. Why has a meeting been called so quickly? Shikaku asked as he eyed the kumo nin in curiosity. Weren't you supposed to leaving? Naruto sat down in the Hokage's seat while Shizune stood behind him and the kumo nin stood off to the side. Yes, I will be leaving shortly, but something has come up. He looked around and closed his eyes. Uchiha Sasuke. Everyone was suddenly on alert at his name, knowing nothing good could come out of it. Naruto could have swore he heard troublesome echo through the room. What did the little bastard do now? Tsume growled out. The kumo nin were quite shocked at how casual the clan head spoke and thought it was more relaxing compared to what they thought was going to happen. He has joined Akatsuki along with 3 other people that he partnered up with. He has also captured the Hachibi Jinchuriki, who is the Rikudo's brother. The Rikudo wants all information on Sasuke to deal with him himself. He explained to them all. What do you plan to do? Hiashi asked. Naruto sighed and rubbed his temple, wondering if he was only 16 years of age since he felt old. Honestly, we have to put him into the bingo book. I heard the only reason we didn't is because of Danzo and the other 2 voting against it. He said with a raised eyebrow. What would you suggest? He asked, wanting their opinion on this matter as he was new to all of this. Toza looked at Naruto with a smile on his face. What you decided is the best decision right now. I too agree. Shibi said. Naruto nodded before turning to the Hokage head. Hiashi, I need any available Hyuga to guard Konoha's walls. At this moment in time we are lax on security. Any small village could use this moment in time to their advantage. Hiashi gave a nod in approval, glad that Naruto could take control of situations. Naruto then turned to Choza. Choza, all available Akimichis will be needed in the repairs for heavy lifting etc. I'm sure you already had your clan on it, but I need to make sure. Choza have a small smile and nod return. Shikaku, I need you to go through all information we have gathered on the Akatsuki and Uchiha Sasuke, his group included, and figure a way to combat them as best as you can. I know we are limited, but right now anything is good. Shikaku gave a lazy salute in acknowledgement, silently proud of how Naruto was taking charge of the situation. Inoichi Ibiki, you are both needed to interrogate Kimura and Koharu and get any information they have been withholding. I don't have any doubt that they have been going behind the past Hokage's backs also. Any available Yamanaka are needed to help in the rebuilding. Inoichi gave a nod, pleased with how their new Hokage was handling the situation, despite the amount of pressure he was under. Zoom, I need you and your clan to help in the rebuilding as well, the same goes for you Shibi, right now rebuilding of Konoha is the most important job. Both gave a nod, although Tsume grinned, which kind of scared him at the feral quality. As you know from earlier, Kakashi will have people contact Yukigakure no Sato, the princess has most likely heard of what's happened and she will send help in the rebuilding, the same goes for Tazuna, the bridge builder from Nami no Kuni. The Kumo nin had to admit, the Hokage, despite being new, could take charge of the situation quickly. This was the kind of man all Kages should be in their books. Of course they loved their Rikage, but he was a bit eccentric and easy to anger. Very well. Naruto then looked at the Kumo nin with a small smile. You have my permission to use the library and look up Sasuke's file, all known information will be in that, but we only met him once in the last few years, so we have no idea what he's capable of right now. The Kumo nin bowed their head and smiled. Thank you Hokage-sama. Samui said before holding up a second later. There is also this, Rikage-sama has requested a Kage summit in a week at Tetsu no Kuni, the land of iron, he wishes to discuss what to do about Akatsuki. I see. Naruto muttered. A Kage meeting now of all times. So, the Rikage's brother gets kidnapped and now he decides to do something about it. I have the nerve to just say fuck off and handle your own problems, because I know Tsunade had requested help from other villages and got nothing in return whatsoever. And yet the Rikage expects us to just go along with what he wants. Hokage-sama. What will you do? Hiashi asked the question they all wanted to know once they saw him scowl. Shizune Naruto spoke up, getting her attention. Did Tsunade ever send for help against the threat of Akatsuki? He knew they did, but he wanted the Kumo shinobi to understand some stuff. Yes Hokage-sama, but the requests were denied by both Tsuchi no Kuni and Kaminari no Kuni several times, forcing her to create the Niju Shoutai. 20 platoons, Shizune answered her new Hokage and watched as the Kumo shinobi went pale at the possible repercussion of the Rikage's actions. Rikage-sama said no to helping against Akatsuki. Why? Samui thought in shock as she watched Naruto interlock his fingers in front of his face. I see. And yet the Rikage expects us to simply do as he says, huh? He asked rhetorically. The clan heads could. Naruto was clearly agitated if not angry about the Rikage's actions, and they couldn't blame him. Especially with the fact the Rikage only took action after his brother was kidnapped. Well then, let's give him what he wants. Naruto finished with a grin. What? Carrie asked as her mouth tried to form more words, she could see the same happening with her two teammates. Naruto simply smiled. What can I say? A meeting of the 5 Kages sounds like a good thing. Besides, I'd like to see what, or rather hear what the other Kages have been doing, whilst every Jinchuriki has been kidnapped and had the Biju extracted. His face darkened. I'm sure they have a very good explanation. Most of the people there shivered as his voice turned ice cold at the end when referring to the Kage's unwillingness to act against the actions of the Akatsuki. It wasn't like they could blame him, each and every Akatsuki member had been killed by them, except Madara and Itachi Uchiha, though, who had been killed by Sasuke Uchiha, but even so, a missing nin had done more damage to that organization than the Kages have. Naruto glanced at the Kumo shinobi. As I said before, you have permission to access all the information we currently have on Sasuke Uchiha. Kakashi Hatake will be in charge of things here once I'm gone, so should there be anything else, you'll have to speak with him. Once you go back to your Rikage, tell him the Hokage will certainly be at the summit of the 5 Kages. All 3 Kumo shinobi gave a nods before Naruto waved them out, which they certainly did, just in case they angered him even more. Naruto sighed as he looked at the clan heads and was surprised and relieved the approving and proud looks he could see in their eyes and expressions. Are you sure it will be wise for you to be going to such a meeting? Shibi Aburami asked. Iwagakure will most likely attack you when they see the resemblance between yourself and your father, the Yondaime Hokage. If it happens, it happens. Naruto shrugged. Truth be told, if it does happen, then it will just prove that they don't realize the threat the shinobi world is in with Akatsuki out there. As you all know, I have the memories and the knowledge that Pain possessed. He decided to call him Pain, so they knew who exactly he was referring to. I know the threat that Akatsuki pose better than any other Kage, and if I can't get them to see that, then we'd be better off on our own. Would that be wise? Hiashi asked with a raised eyebrow. Truthfully, I would rather have the backing support of the other 4 countries. I have confidence that Gaara, the Kazekage, will help us against Akatsuki, but as going by facts, Konoha has killed or incapacitated 4 Akatsuki members, Kakuzu, Haiden, Sasori and Pain. Sasuke Uchiha has killed 2, Madara and Itachi Uchiha. While the other Kages have done nothing but sit on their arse and basically hand their Jinchuriki over to the Akatsuki, and to be frank, they make me sick. He shook his head as everyone listened to his passionate speech with awe. Anyway, enough about them or the meeting. He stood up and bit his thumb. I'll be returning in 5 days to take the official mantle of the Hokage. He informed them as he went through the required hand seals. Boar, dog, monkey, bird, ram. Lifting his hand at the last one, he brought it down on the desk in front of him. Kuchiyus no Jutsu. Summoning technique, a small puff of smoke emanated from his hand, and as he lifted it, swiped the smoke away, it revealed his new sensei. Fukasaku-sensei. Naruto greeted with a small bow. Naruto-chan. What's wrong? Fukasaku trailed off when he saw the Rinnegan still active in his eyes. The Rinnegan? But how? Naruto chuckled lightly. I can explain all of that later, but I was wondering if I could come back to Mount Mombakuzen to finish my training in 5 days. If that's acceptable, that is? He asked. 5 days? Fukasaku asked, choosing to discuss his eyes later. Well, I guess with you it could be possible, with your Kage Bunshin it should be possible, and now that you bear the Rinnegan, it could almost be certain it will be done. Good. Naruto nodded before turning to Shizune. Shizune-chan, make sure Kakashi-sensei actually keeps the village in check, and also it would be best if you don't tell anyone where I am, it would only cause more questions. Turning to the clan heads, he carried on. You guys already know your orders, follow them, and remember, Kakashi will be Hokage when I'm gone. Understood. They all chorused. Good. Naruto looked down at Fukasaku. Well then, let's go, I have everything I need on me now. Very well, Naruto-chan. Fukasaku nodded before grasping Naruto's hand and leaving in a larger puff of smoke. Shikaku chuckled when the room got quiet. That young man is going to shake the very foundations of this world when he returns. All everyone else could do was smile and nod, knowing full well he would change the world. Mount Mombakuzen. Naruto and Fukasaku appeared in an explosion of smoke at the teleportation hole that the toads used to travel around the elemental countries. As Naruto stepped out of the smoke that enveloped them, his now blue eyes looked around still in awe with the beauty of the place. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and took a moment to savor the fresh scent of nature in the atmosphere. There was where he truly felt at peace, where he could pretend that there were no S-rank missing nin after him or those like him, or that when he goes back he will have to meet with the other Kages, and Kami only knows how that's going to end. Probably not exactly in a peaceful manner, that was for sure. Naruto-chan. Fukasaku spoke up, getting the teen's attention. The great toad sage wishes to meet with you. The old toad then noticed Naruto's eyes had reverted back to the usual blue. And once he has spoken, you will explain how you got those eyes. Naruto sighed and gave a nod. Let's go see him then. The quicker I start my training, the better. He nodded at his sensei. I also need to find out how I can access the Kyuubi's chakra without the repercussions I usually get. I'm no fool, I may have the Rinnegan now, but there's no telling what Madara has up his sleeve. They eventually made their way to a large room with drawing of many battles, all legendary, folklore and mythical battles engraved along the walls. At the end of the room was a gigantic old toad, larger than Gamabunta and looking at least a few millennia years old. I've brought Naruto Uzumaki here like you asked. Fukasaku bowed before the ancient toad, as much as he could. Good. The wheezy voice of the old toad echoed throughout the room. Now, the reason I called you here, who are you again? Naruto and Fukasaku sweat dropped at the wise elder toad's fragile mind. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto answered with a sigh. When are you going to remember my name, Mugama Sennin? Ah. That's right. Naruto, I have seen your future. The great toad sage opened its eyes a little, but so they could the whites of the sclera. You will meet an octopus. Naruto couldn't help but stare at the wise toad, wondering if he'd finally snapped. Fukasaku likewise was in the same mind and barely held in the urge to sigh out of weariness. An octopus? Naruto asked, picturing a basic octopus in his mind and wondering what the hell he'd meet one for. It isn't clear, but I have definitely seen octopus tentacles. And you will fight a boy with power in his eyes and then. Yeah, I figured that one. Naruto interrupted with a sigh. Do you know who he is? The great toad sage asked. Yeah, I have a pretty good idea. Naruto replied, not giving any names away. The old toad mused before carrying on. Gamatora, I too, have seen a future where you are with Naruto. Give him the key to the Yondaime's seal. Gamatora that had been beside the large toad grunted. Very well. Before Naruto's eyes, Gamatora's body seemed to lengthen beyond normal means, and then just like a scroll would, its body unraveled revealing a long sheet of paper with a very complex seal design printed on it. What is that? Naruto asked in shock. He could tell it was a very complex seal, something way out of his league. That was one area he had to polish up on. Kenjutsu, not only was it used for many purposes, but it was also a very important factor for his father's Hiraishin. It's the key to unlocking the seal the Yondaime Hokage placed on your stomach. Gamatora answered, arms folded. With this you can free the Kyuubi if you want. Just place your hand on that square. He pointed to a part of the scroll that had a square box around a blank area. This is the final step to completing the jutsu Jiraiya spoke of. Naruto looked at the scroll for a moment, somewhat hesitant to touch it. What are you waiting for? Fukasaku asked with a frown. Hurry up and touch the seal. Amatora Naruto received the toad's attention. If I touch the seal, what will come from it? Amatora seemed slightly surprised before grunting. Right, well, the QB's power is made up of two parts, its chakra and its will. In order to control the QB, you would need to draw only on the QB's chakra and make it your own. But it's not that easy. If you draw on the chakra, then the QB's will comes with it. The QB's will is a mass of hatred and clings strongly to the chakra. No matter how strongly you brace yourself, it will try to take over your heart by clinging to the shreds of hatred inside. In other words, in order to control the QB's chakra, your own will must be strong and free of hatred. In order to separate the two completely. Your father, Minato, made sure that seal would allow a small amount of the QB's chakra would leak out and naturally mix with your chakra. Once you use the key to unlock the seal, you will be able to draw on the QB's full chakra, but if the QB's will is stronger than your own, it will take over you, simple as that. The QB will once more walk the earth. Naruto closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He knew he had to use the key if he wanted to gain the QB's chakra as his own. He had to confront the QB, he had to gain its chakra somehow. He knew he didn't really have hate anymore, not like he did before the Rinnegan, the one thing that had seemed to urge him of all hate. Of course H got angry, sad, annoyed, and maybe he wants a little revenge against Akatsuki, but hate. It all seemed like a foreign concept to him now. He had kind of hated the villages how they used to be. Judging him as if he wasn't even human, like he shouldn't exist. The only people who could understand that hate was the Jinchuriki and Sora from the Fire Temple. And yet, it was gone. Let's do it. Without another word, he pressed his hand into the square seal where his fingers lit up with chakra. I don't know may happen when I face the QB, but I can't be afraid of it any longer. I have tricks up my sleeve now anyway. Fukasaku smiled from behind Naruto, silently proud of the young man who had surpassed Jiraiya and will one day surpass his father. Mount Mambakyusan. Secret Shrine. Naruto was seated in a meditative position within a large oval room. In front of him was a waterfall of the special oil that had helped him learn to use Senjutsu chakra. Around him were several poles with candles atop them alight, giving the dark room some light as the fire from the candles flickered around the room. After he had placed his hand on the seal and activated the key, Gamatora had then been shoved into his mouth and inside of him. It was the most disgusting thing he had ever done. If he had known he had to, that he would have said fuck it to QB's power. The very thought of having something as large as Gamatora shoved down his throat almost made him gag. After that, he had asked Fukasaku if there was a place he could go to access his mindscape with no outside interference. The old toad had actually answered him with a positive which had made him sigh in relief at the time. He had then led the young man to what looked an ancient ritual room deep within Mount Mambakyusan. Fukasaku had told him that he would wait outside the room just in case something went wrong. Naruto had obviously accepted that and had sealed himself within the room, and now here he was. Trying to communicate with the QB. Closing his eyes, he focused on the Sower-like mindscape, the large golden gate with the seal sticker attached to it and the QB no Yoko behind those bars. Mindscape. The feeling of falling into water startled Naruto and his eyes snapped open immediately. Looking around, he found himself sat within what looked like a small river with the water just passing over his knees. Looking up, he found the very same golden gates he had been picturing moments before. Smiling and letting loose a breath, he picked himself up from the water, so only his feet were below the water level. So I'm here then. Now what? He looked around for a moment before looking up at the piece of paper stuck to the opening of the bars, with the kanji for seal inscribed on it. Looking past the bars, he could now see clear as day, as if the darkness had been washed from his soul. Walking closer, he could see the large form of the QB no Yoko lying down with its head on its large paws and looking at through the gate. Hey. Naruto waved slightly before rolling his eyes. Look, I don't like you and you don't like me. HMPH, that's putting it mildly. The QB growled as its eyes narrowed, wondering where his container was going with this. Whatever. My point is, we hate each other, I get it. You hate me for being stuck inside of me and restricted, I get that, hell, I understand that. I hate you because, well, when I was a kid, whenever people looked at me they saw you instead. I got called the QB's reincarnation, for crying out loud. Naruto snorted while QB looked at him in curiosity. I used to hate the fact that you was sealed inside of me. I sued to blame you for ruining my life and everything else. But, I could easily blame my father for sealing you in me. In the end, blame, hate and anger is useless, because all it does is create more pain, for me or you. My father sealed you inside of me, because he believed I could use your powers as my own to protect this world from Madara Uchiha. QB growled in anger at that foul name. Where are you going with this? The QB asked, curious and intrigued at the sudden change in character of his host. Though he suspected it was something to do with the Rinnegan and the knowledge he now knew, more importantly, the knowledge that Madara was alive and kicking, though he was still blind to some facts. Amatora believes you're just a beast full of hate, or rather a beast made of hate. I don't believe that, well yes, given the facts and what everybody knows they would come to that conclusion. But if that was true, I would feel hate from you now, but instead I just sense anger, frustration, annoyance, and I don't blame you for that. I accepted the key to give you your will to make you whole again, because whether you like it or not, we're in this together. Naruto stood in front of the bars, arms crossed, blue eyes shimmering with power and determination the QB hadn't seen since the Yondaime. Ha! You're hilarious, Naruto. You're weak compared to my power. Working with you would be nothing but a hindrance, you may have the Rinnegan at your disposal, but even that wouldn't be enough to subdue my power. QB snorted with amusement. I see, you're going to be a bigger pain than I thought you would be. With a small leap, Naruto jumped up to the seal and hovered before it. Grasping the edge, he tore it off in front of a wide-eyed QB, looking at where the seal had been, there was now some sort of hexagonal indentation and patterns on it. Lifting his flak jacket and t-shirt too, he revealed his seal printed on his stomach clear as day. Holding his right arm up, the same seal that had been on Gamatora appeared on his arm up to the palm of his hand. Lighting his fingertips with chakra, he slammed his hand into his gut and twisted it, making him wince as the seal began changing into what looked like a black hole, while the hexagonal shape on the bar doors began unwinding itself until it became hollow. A large gust of wind blew Naruto back slightly as the heavy doors were swung open to reveal the full might of the QB. You broke the seal. The QB said with some surprise. Ah, you want to control my power. It continued in sudden realization. Yes, I want to use your chakra without the usual backlash, but that wasn't why I unsealed you. This way, we can really talk. Naruto said, lowering himself down to the ground. Madara Uchiha is still alive, I don't know how strong he is right now, to be more precise, Nagato didn't know how strong he currently is. He's going to be coming after me, and that could only lead to two things, he manages to capture, extracts you, killing me, and once more he gains control over you like he once has when he first fought the Shodaime Hokage. Or, we were together, fight as one, and we defeat him with our combined power. I know you wouldn't lower yourself to cooperating with a human, especially one that's the son of the man that sealed you inside of me. But we can't dwell on petty reasons like that. Madara may go after my friends, loved ones, and God forbid he found out about Temari, he would most likely kill her just to get me to make a mistake. I need your power to protect my precious people, and while I now have power and once I've trained I'll be stronger, I can't count on that and expect it all to be enough. He pleaded his case to the large beast in front of him who simply looked down at him. The QB let loose a large breath as it looked at its container. Not many have gained my respect before. 3 people have, or to be more specific, 3 humans are the most I have ever felt respect for. That humans could progress so far in skills, chakra and even jutsu to the point that they could seal a being of power like myself. Minato Namikaze, yourself and Kushina Uzumaki. It said, shocking Naruto. My mother? Naruto asked confused. Maybe I can answer that question. Naruto and QB looked over to another section of his mindscape to see a woman at the height of 5'4" with long bright red hair that reached down to her calves, with strands that framed both sides of her face, with the left one being parted by a hair clip. She also wore a kimono-like plain blouse with loose sleeves, dark skirt and tight dark stockings. Kushina Uzumaki, the QB growled out, making Naruto's eyes widen. Mom? He asked with a gulp, completely shocked by this turnaround of events. Kushina smiled wide at her son, who could be considered a younger clone of his father. Naruto. Before Naruto could react, she'd appeared in front of him and wrapped her arms around him tightly, pressing her head into his chest, the smile still stuck on her face. All Naruto could do was return the embrace while thinking. What's going on? Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys, let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, peace out.